This week we're going to talk about risk and internal controls, or the ways that companies deal with risk every day. When we look at this, there are three major types of threats that companies face every day: physical threats, data threats, and threats to operations. So what do we mean by this? Well, let's look at our physical threats. Some threats that companies face include intrusion to physical plant, so people gaining access to parts of buildings or operations that they're not authorized to do. For example, a thief may dress up as a delivery person, throw some boxes on a dolly, and walk towards a door at the same time an employee is, hoping that the employee will be kind and hold the door for them and give them access. Next, we have natural disasters. Natural disasters are threats like hurricanes, fires, floods that could damage our operations or our data centers or our production facilities. Somewhat related to natural disasters, we have heat and humidity and water. These extreme temperatures or extreme weather can damage sensitive electronics and cause disruption to our operations. And then finally, we have blackouts, where we don't have power to run our facilities, and so we can't do the business that we're supposed to be working. So all of these threaten the physical aspect of our business, the ability of the company to produce and to work and to complete things. The coronavirus in 2020 would be a great example of this as well, where you have a pandemic that disrupts the ability of workers to get to work and the ability for people to work safely within the buildings because of potential virus spread. Next, we have threats to the data environment, meaning users getting unauthorized access to our systems to be able to alter or manipulate or delete critical data. Some threats that we see here are system intrusion, or sometimes we call this hacking. Basically, where we have somebody who gains unauthorized access to a system, either through computer code or social engineering, convincing people to give up their password and their username and letting them into the system. We see that there is theft of intellectual property. So a disgruntled employee may download information to a flash drive and take it to a competitor, like we saw in the case of Google and the self-driving car. We also have destruction of data. A common example of data destruction is when someone gains access to an email account and then sends a message to all of the users and then deletes the contact list so the sender has no idea where those emails were sent. And we also have system interruption, where we're not able to gain access to the system. One common example of this is ransomware that has hit a lot of hospitals and local governments over the past couple of years. Most recently, the company Garmin that generates GPS devices and watches was hit by a very severe ransomware attack and were not able to get access to their system until they paid a multi-million-dollar ransom. We'll talk about that when we talk about data access a little bit later. Finally, threats to operations come from a lot of different areas. For example, we may have unintentional disclosure or leaks of sensitive information. We see this with cell phones all the time. Before a company like Google or Samsung announce something, people have shared details about the product, including photographs and renders and specifications, way before the official announcement takes place. We also have social engineering. Social engineering is where you manipulate people, sometimes pretending to be someone else so that you gain access to systems or physical locations and so forth. We have physical destruction or sabotage, where we try and break down facilities. A few years ago, there was a virus called Stuxnet that would infect Siemens nuclear power plants, and it would speed up the centrifuge and disable the power plant and require extensive repairs and remediation to correct. You have inappropriate use, so using systems to do things that you shouldn't be. For example, I may have a computer in my desk at work, and I've installed mining software to mine Bitcoin or blockchain transactions using the company's resources for things that are not related to company business. This may also include employees using company computers to access websites that contain pornography or pirated software that expose the company's network to threats of malware and viruses and other things. Some of the threats are not so dire. For example, we may just have inefficient operations, meaning I have a process where a worker is copying and pasting data from one spreadsheet to the next, when that data should be generated automatically and imported into the system. And then of course we have fraud. This is where I use deliberate deception to get an unfair or unlawful gain involving pressure, rationalization, and opportunity. So among these three areas, we have a couple additional threats that involve privacy and security. These threats are primarily to our data and our systems, but they're really important for us to understand so that we can put up good internal controls in our process. These include the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality means that we're trying to protect the storage and sharing of sensitive data and information. Integrity means that we're trying to make sure that our data are valid and complete. And availability means that our systems are online when they're needed and recoverable when there is disruption. So we're going to look at those three specifically towards the end of the lectures this week, and we'll look at some specific threats and controls that we can put in place to secure those. So of all these threats that we've talked about, can you think of some specific examples that companies face? What would you do if you were in the manager's shoes to minimize that threat? Once you've looked at this, let's move on to the next video.